Welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, to create value, and to build what's next. I'm Preston Chandler, here with my co host, JL Heather. Together, we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Today, I'm excited for our guest today. It's someone who has been shaping the tech landscape from inside server rooms and sales calls and startups for the last 25 years. Caleb Snow is the Chief Revenue Officer at UMIT Technologies, which is a tribal-owned IT firm. They specialize in delivering managed services, cybersecurity, and cloud solutions for their organizations across the country. But that's just one chapter of a truly eclectic story. So Caleb has spent time building firewalls as a teenager in his dad's ISP, and he's helped launch an AI startup for cybersecurity. He brings this rare mix of curiosity and grit and straight talk into everything he does. He's got great stories from the early internet to lessons from failing up in tech, and he has this contagious belief in growing people, not just companies. So we'll talk about what it means to lead through failure, to scale trust alongside innovation, and to build real world solutions that might not be flashy, but they matter deeply. Caleb, welcome to Breakthrough Innovation.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited for this. Caleb was connected to us through our friend Jason Grimm, and so we have high hopes. High hopes.
Yeah,
Jason sets
Jason
a high
was like
standard.
episode 10 or something like that.
Yeah. Jason's a longtime friend, so he sets a high standard. Though I've known him long enough to know who you're dealing with there.
Great. First question for you. I find this one kind of interesting. So you've talked about feeling up and that you might jump into roles over your head
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then take a few months to find your footing and then rise. Where did that mindset come from, and what has it taught you about growth and resilience?
Well, for me, I think it may have stemmed from a lack of proper education and then just having a very extreme ADHD mindset. I'm born in 80. I was diagnosed when I was 2 years old. That's how bad it was early on as having extreme. So I always say I was ADHD before it was cool. So yeah, I think a lot of that is just, I've always been excited about certain things and my excitement can shift. That's changed a little bit as I've gotten older, learned how to tame that. But yeah, for the first 20 or so years of my career was about just constantly being obsessed and exploring new things.
And it's interesting to me. You've heard of the Peter principle, like getting promoted to your highest level of incompetence?
Hmm.
I think we always, I shouldn't say always, we see a lot of leaders that do get in over their head and it becomes obvious pretty quick.
Yeah.
What I hear you saying, though, is not that. It's how do you climb the learning curve fast enough to accomplish what you need to accomplish?
Yeah, for me, it's the cycle is to a T, especially the people who are closest to me and who have worked with me, and not just know me professionally, but know me personally as well. I would call some of them out, but I don't think they would like to be called out and associated with me publicly. For me, the cycle's been the same, and there's some variation to this, but it's I've found something that, to me, a career is not just walking a straight path. It's a ship that's kind of going through the ocean. And so I'm steering around all sorts of things that you can think of. And for me, I'm always tried to look ahead out for that iceberg or maybe even for that new land that I want to explore. So for me, it's been what's interesting and then frankly, what's going to keep me marketable. I have mouths to feed, I have curiosities to feed, and I've just combined that getting to this path of, finding something, leaving a perfectly good job every single time. Every single time it's been about leaving a perfectly good job where much to my wife's concerns, I could have just stayed there and kept things consistent and boring, but boring has never interested me. So it's been getting into the idea was not to jump over my head. The idea was to jump into something that challenged me or that I thought was marketable, or I thought, hey, that's where the market, where it was shifting to. And that's what has brought me to everything. And every single time I've been over my head for sure. So I do have part of that, but getting acclimated and then getting into a good smooth motion of work. And then I spend the next 8 months starting to get into the same patterns of, well, what else is some of it was job insecurity, some of it was that market approach, but what's going to be next for me?
What I like about what you said, I think it's Liz Wiseman. It might not be Liz Wiseman, it may be someone else who talks about this idea of there's underwhelmed where you're not challenged, you're not growing. There's overwhelmed where you've
Hmm.
taken on too much, you can't succeed, you're failing. And then there's whelmed, which is where you have just enough to challenge you to keep you growing outside the of what you thought was possible. And it sounds like to me is what you've really done is you've become an expert at walking that line of whelmed.
Well, I mean, I think that's one way of looking at it. Walking the line for sure. But to me, I'm also a man of extremes. I don't do anything very well, which can actually be very disastrous sometimes, personally,
Yeah.
and career-wise. But I'm either all the way off and a slug, or I am all the way on, and I mean on right now. So that
Nice.
I always tell people I'm the most socially extroverted introvert you'll ever meet in my entire life, in your entire lives, because of the bipolarness of my mentalities. I'm either eating all the bad stuff, or I'm an insane workout freak. It just, there's no middle ground.
At least on the introvert extrovert perspective, I think JL and I feel a little bit of that. We're both introverts, but through jobs and stuff, we have learned to be more, I wouldn't say even extroverted, more outgoing,
Yeah,
more willing to stand in front of a group. But it's certainly some growth that has
for
to happen.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, you have a lot of engineers that start their career thinking that they're going to work and live in the back office, and that's where they're going to stay, or these days work from home, and that's where they're going to stay. But more and more often you see where you're being asked to present, where you're being asked to validate, you're being asked to be on camera, whatever it is, and it's uncomfortable, but sometimes uncomfortableness is good for helping you advance yourself personally and professionally. So I
Mhm.
was one of those engineers, in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, where I was like, dream job for me was to make 80 grand a year, and for the rest of my life, and hide in the back server room somewhere. That was it. Like, that's all the aspiration I had. So, but again, there's change, and if I want to go embrace the change, you have to go do things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about maybe the current uncomfortable. So let's talk about UMIT Technologies. So you're helping this collection of some small acquired companies to find their footing, to figure out what they're doing. What's the biggest challenge in integrating those growing businesses that weren't born digital?
So, I mean, I would actually challenge a little bit. Most of them were born, but they were born maybe like late 2010s. And what is been the biggest challenge, and I say this in a very positive way, is navigating. So we're an MSP. We're a managed services provider. We have the heavy focus around cybersecurity. I mean, everything we do, live and breathe and sell and deliver to our customers is all wrapped very deeply in cybersecurity. We don't, our kind of internal mantra is, don't let our customers make the news, right? You don't want, and it's not for the sake of money. It's the sake of, we don't want to see our customers' data infringe on, or their personal
Yeah.
information infringed on. It's extremely important to us. What makes it an interesting dynamic is that we're not owned by private equity. The concept of this comes from the Upper Mattaponi tribe, which is based here in Virginia, about 45 minutes away in King William County. There's three federally recognized tribes in that county: the Mattaponi, the Upper Mattaponi, and the Pamunkey. And they decided that, in part, so they only got federally recognized 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago, in 2018. And so they've had a very short period of time to build their own government. There's about 150 employees in that government right now, to create lines of revenue that will help support their people, and also create a structure that's very healthy. They're very obsessed with creating, breaking stereotypes and creating generational opportunities for their people. So I'm very proud of that, and it's deeply integrated in our conversation. Where the reason I bring up private equity is, a lot of MSPs these days, as other organizations, HVAC. I'm watching local HVAC companies get bought up by private equity. You name it is getting bought up by private equity and getting treated around as a commodity. We don't want that, right? And so, me coming in from being focused on Fortune 500s and federal and all these other things, for me, a distinguishing story is, I'm not coming here to build something for anybody but the Upper Mattaponi people. So that's my distinguishing story. So it's gone from being, hey, I have the pride of building this selling this $40,000 server node high performance compute cluster, and that was my pride, that was my ego, and that's what I've always been big on. It's like, hey, what can I do that's notable? And for me, notoriety has shifted where it's not about me, it's about what am I doing for somebody else. That's actually a lot of parts and elements of my life at this point. I've been fortunate enough to get to that point. Not everybody is. And for me, when we go to have these conversations with our customers, I don't have to worry about them in the back of their minds worrying about, well, when private MSP gets to 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, there's certain markers where they go for sale. We're not doing that. We're in the tribe is invested and committed to the long term, to indefinitely at this point. They've already invested in other areas as well. So it's a very stable environment. They're invested in healthcare substantially, actually the largest healthcare provider in King William County now today. So they have a really solid backing. They have some really smart people, and they've invested in a lot of resources to help structure things like this company and how we vet acquisitions and things like that, which is just part of what we do, part of what I do here. And to make sure that everything is done to a plan versus just, hey, they are for sale, let's go buy them. Obviously, a big pursuit of us is greenfield as well, not just through acquisition.
So, question on that front: how do you see that difference in mindset? From the short term private equity mindset to more of a long term with the tribe. How does that impact decision making? How does that impact things like innovation?
I think that's a great question, and we didn't rehearse that. No, I'm just kidding. But no. So for me personally, they invested in someone like me. They invested in other people too. If you've heard since JL likes to always, sounds like he likes to always quote books, get the right people on the bus. They are heavily focused on not just, acquiring company, but very quickly, we've had to create our own culture in a very short period of time, what this company is going to look, what this organization is going to look like. I don't even just say company, but the tribe investing in the right people ahead of time. Out there, and thankfully we've been productive to the point where we are self-supporting, but that wasn't always the case, and they saw a vision that was bigger than the existing team. And I think that takes a unique organization to willing to see that and not just go, what's the bottom line? How can we make as much money on little resources as possible? That's not the perspective that they've taken. And I'm one of the examples of that myself, having been on there for about 5 months now. So that just investing the right tools and people for me has been substantial. Very rarely do we get said no to unless it's just something absurd, which we do ask for absurd things.
Sure. Well, I think, it's interesting you talk about investing in the right people. I think it's worth mentioning that investment in people doesn't stop after you've hired them.
Yeah.
And I'm
Correct.
curious, like over time, like how are you going to continue to invest in your people?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. Obviously, technical training, right? So not all of acquisitions are going to be or people that we employ off of wherever we source them from. They're all going to have the same background. So making sure that everybody is up to certain levels, whether you're tier 1, 2, or 3, which is what we have today, making sure that they all are empowered to have a base level, a required level of, I don't want to just say certification, because we know that certifications don't always mean education. So, and I'm a big proponent of certifications. We just know that it can or cannot mean. So making sure we have people with the right level of education or experience for each role that they're in, and that it's a common framework of operating for how we do business. And that's when I say it's a very, very abused word these days, but culture for us, making sure that we know, and I say we, and that includes myself and Baron, we're the leaders of this organization, making sure that we ourselves understand where we want to go, and then making sure that the rest of the team. So having education, having building out processes, which is so important, and making sure that there's a place where we can have repeatable tasks being reviewed from, and we also making ourselves as leaders vulnerable to the teams that we are serving, not just our customers that we're serving, but our teams. If there's somebody that's getting overworked, we need to go find, so they need to feel support. We need to find ways to, to balance out those hours, balance out their support. So for us, it's about empowering the employees to make certain decisions on where they want to go as well. Maybe they're tier 1 and they want to work with tier 3. So giving them a path to do that. These are all challenges. I mean, we had all sorts of new challenges that I never faced. We had an employee pass away at a customer site within my 3rd week of being here. I mean, I just had a meeting with them. So you're trying to do all these normal things that you should be doing, and then you get hit with a right jab you did not see coming at all. So
Yeah.
I mean, then you start having guilt because you're like, well, I'm supposed to be leading this company. How do I take care of this customer. Oh my goodness, I should call their spouse.
Yeah.
Like you see, because you're like, I had the wrong thought. So I mean, just constantly pivoting, constantly learning things like that, that I'm sure lots of other people have gone through. I had not gone through some of those things. So there's always, I think I would say in the very beginning, it was almost daily. There was something new.
Yeah.
Thankfully, as you create culture and these kind of form momentum and you build these processes, there should be less and less of that. There's always going to be new things, but there should be less and less of that.
So I have one last question. The time flies by so
It
fast.
does. Yeah.
So along these lines, you're talking about working with people, and it makes me think of mentoring and helping other people out. As you are mentoring kind of this next generation of technologists, what do you think they most need to hear, and what do we underestimate about them?
So I'm going to do a shout out. I'm not going to in any way reveal any personal information here, but I sit on a board for a regional AI awareness, community awareness organization called AI Ready RVA. You can cut that later if you really need to, but I think it's worth keeping in. When I saw they were created, they were formed a year ago, and when I saw how quick they were going and what they were doing, it's all about bringing awareness of the very fast changing conversation around artificial intelligence. If you talk to me, you'll very quickly realize I am not the top person to be talking to on artificial intelligence, but it is an obsession of mine. So when we talk about innovation, of course, everybody wants to talk about artificial intelligence. A lot of times it gets, dribbled down to a few things but where it's a very large, constantly shifting, I would say platform, but set of offerings and experiences. So for me, it's not just staying close to the heartbeat of what's going on for my own personal edification. What I've really, really gotten the most enjoyment out of is we do a lot of facilitations. We have a lot of cohorts around education, fintech, you name it, healthcare, manufacturing, and it's each of them. It's about how can it help that organization, and we just invite the community to come to these events. I mean, we had an education event a couple weeks ago that VCU, their school of business, hosted, and it was really neat. So you asked, how and like what's important to me, being able to bring. I think we had 180 educators show up from around Central Virginia. Some of these are first grade educators. They want to know how to do lesson planning better. Some of them are eighth grade. They want to know how to do, I would say automated, but formalized email responses. When you're in as teachers get put in a lot of different pressure points constantly, and that causes a lot of emotions and situations to flux. Having a consistent, well-crafted message that's applicable to that situation using artificial intelligence and helping show them how to do that, it was like highlight of their day, of their year. So, I mean, that's just one example. So getting involved with those types of events, getting involved with that nonprofit has been fundamental. It's fundamentally changing how Central Virginia views and brings in and manages AI to really just a lot of different organizations. So to me, that's been, but as far as like the mentoring, getting in there, running cohorts, helping get people plugged in, that's the biggest thing I can do these days. And then of course, if you talk to anybody who knows me, it's constant. I'm a consummate networker. So for me, if someone comes to me and say, hey, as several people have in the last year, a job has changed, a role has changed, it's been eliminated. Try to spend time with them. Okay, so you've been out of looking for a job for 8 years. Let me just tell you now, a little bit's changed. Let's talk about that. Let's get you up to speed, or maybe you just graduated. So for me, the last thing I'll say, I know I'm very long-winded here, but it's sorry. It's been very much, I wouldn't say I am successful, but I have made it to a certain level of success. Because successful to me is probably 5 seconds before I have my last breath, because I'll always be chasing it. But it's only, to me, it's a requirement. And I think it's a requirement of a lot of us that we take our lessons we've learned, the paths we forged, and we make it so people can leapfrog us. So the next generation coming up can leapfrog us. They should. We should not want to compete with them. We should want to encourage them and empower them. So for me, it's very much a lot about that. So helping with any type of facilitation around that you'll always find me plugged in around here doing that.
Caleb, that's great. That's great. I love hearing that passion for helping other people out and for mentoring the next generation. Before we officially wrap it up, where can our listeners connect with you? Where can they learn more about the work that you're doing, potentially collaborate with you?
Yeah, I mean, so any potential customers can always reach us at umittech.com. There's a contact us form and there's numbers on that site. You can go there to find those. If you want to talk with me directly, I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you're regional, cup of coffee. I travel a lot, so if I'm in your town, I'm very much down for that. I'm always dropping into a CrossFit gym, probably in your town, somewhere around where. But you can go to find me at just look for Caleb Snow on it's this big beard and face on LinkedIn, and you can find me pretty quickly.
Thank you, Caleb. Thanks for such a great conversation.
Thank
We're
you so much.
grateful that we've had a chance for you to be on and to share some of your insights.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
For everybody else who has joined us until the end, if today's episode brought you some value, please leave a rating, review wherever you're listening to it or watching the podcast. And if you know anyone else who would benefit from listening to Caleb's insights today, share it with them. Remember, as we always we love to hear what you're thinking, anything that you've applied. Take some actionable insight from today's show and apply it. Let us know how it goes. We love to hear about the progress. And last of all, thanks again, and we will see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.